Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of ACE, Arts, Culture, Education. And here we have another guest, and he's going to give you his story, telling you a little bit of where he's from, what he's about, his education background, and what he hopes to do with his life. First of all, we're going to get his name. Can you please, sir, tell me kindly, what is your name?
Marco EL Boriken.
Marco, nice to meet you. Welcome to Arts, Culture, Education.
Yeah, man.
So I would like to ask you a few questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's get it.
What country are you from?
I'm from New York, North America, USA, and my parents are from Cuba and Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your native language?
My native language is a combination of Spanglish, so English and Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Uh, what is the role of men and in your country?
The role of men.
Yes, in your what role do men play in your country?
Oh man, that's
Yeah.
a large question to ask because um, I would say now things have changed opposed to the past. I would say in the past it was more of a provider role, and I guess now it's I guess men now are in a position of of like that's changed so much, yo. That's a really hard question to answer.
Okay. Okay.
I would say, men in the past were much more in roles of being able to provide, and I guess now I really don't even know because there's so many different uh,
Can you provide us examples? What? So now because of that.
perspectives on like what men are supposed to be nowadays. It's changed so much.
Okay. What is the role of women in your culture?
In my culture.
Yeah.
Okay. So the role of women in my culture, I get again, it's a pretty broad question because of the fact that like New York is so liberal. So women, I guess, it's hard to put again, like for men and women, it's hard to put a role or a label on it. Traditionally speaking, it was being able to provide and to gear all your efforts towards the family, like unit, especially like the next generation, the youth. But things have changed a lot. Things have changed a lot to be more centered around like professionalism, economics. Like paying bills seems to be more important nowadays for men and women.
Okay.
But also, like when it comes to the responsibilities, I guess, or the expectation of men and women, that's also changed dramatically, bro. Because there's a lot more independence, like a lot more independent and liberal thinking now. Like people can kind of just live for themselves,
Okay.
especially in the city.
Awesome. How is education handled in your country?
Handled
Yeah.
well in where I was raised in North Bergen, like New Jersey. Education is kind of like seen as something you just kind of have to get through until you're old enough to start working or until you're old enough to move on to higher education. But uh, it's hard for me to separate being half Cuban and hard for me to separate being half Puerto Rican because the educational perspectives in those places is radically different than New Jersey.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I pretty much got to say. It's kind of more about just getting through it than anything. Yeah.
Okay. Marco, thank you very much for sharing. I want to get a little bit more personal with you.
Yeah, bro.
Ask you some information about yourself and your journey, where you came from and where you're actually going.
Definitely.
So, being from two countries, your parents, right?
Yeah.
One of them being from Cuba and the other one from Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
How has that transpired you to be even uh, greater in New York, where we live currently? How has that helped you accomplish your goals, being from background Latin background?
Well, that's a beautiful question because I recently started to notice how the diaspora of Americans in the Antilles and South America,
Yeah.
so the Caribbean islands, and many of the people that's also in the North American provinces as well. There is a conglomerate of what we call as Moorish culture. So like we come from a kind of like an indigenous and aboriginal lineage and a bloodline that essentially empowers us in ways that are more obvious than others. For example, like in language, right? Like I'm a teacher now, so I'm able to like understand higher forms of language because of the fact that I have a Latin mindset, right? Even though I don't speak Latin, but I'm able to decipher Latin.
Uh-huh.
Same thing with music too, like because hip hop is such an influence here in North America, like everything that is Caribbean based, um, it's kind of like an offshoot of hip hop or kind of like an offshoot of Caribbean music. So it's kind of like at some point, both cultures collide, but in different forms. Like they're more concentrated in different ways. So cooking too, like even cooking stuff, like even the pilon, like having the brick and the mortar, like using the mortar. That's something that's used for indigenous folks all over the world, but particularly for me in this culture, like preserving the cultural aspects from the Caribbean and bringing them up here in New York has helped me kind of like have a more firm uh, sense of confidence, sense of identity, being able to stand on my square and say that I'm a descendant of Boricuas and Tainos and Moorish peoples. So it gives you like an extreme amount of confidence, because there's so many people that was born up here in North America with mad nationalities, knowingly and unknowingly, and they don't really have confidence in their culture like that. They kind of get stripped down to just being reduced to like a profession.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And you said earlier you were a teacher. What kind of teaching do you do actually?
So right now I'm teaching people how to speak English. So I teach international students primarily right now at this phase of my career, from Asia and like West Asia, north of Russia as well. Like people how to speak English from those regions. In the past, I was working primarily with South Americans.
Okay. And now working with international students, how has that broadened your perspective on culture? Now that you're working with international students, how has that broadened your perspective in any way?
Well, I will say like working with international folks has gotten me to realize essentially that we have more in common than we think.
Okay.
You know, international folks also they have a very strong foundation as to like how they operate generationally in trust, how they pass down estates,
Uh-huh.
equity, inheritances,
Uh-huh.
and like where the priority is in terms of like 4 generations later for them to have like the most optimal lifestyle. So that's one of the biggest um like eye-opening realizations I've had working with people that are from particularly Asia.
Uh-huh.
Like we're talking about like people in their family lineages have been thinking about what their grandchildren's life was going to be like
Uh-huh.
hundreds years back. That's something that's a little bit different
Uh-huh.
than working with people that are from like these metropolitan areas and like people that are more like self-centered and kind of worried about like modern life. But that's I would say that's what's really helped me a lot. Besides learning how to speak other people's languages and stuff like that, what I noticed that we have a whole lot more common than not.
Okay, Marco, thank you. I really like what we're hearing. You're giving us
Thank
a
you,
lot of
man.
information. As far as your dream and aspirations, what are your dream and aspirations? And can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so essentially, I'm an author. I'm an author of a book called Boricua Yorkino, right? Where I have an appellation on here. I came out as a Moorish author, Boricua author, Marco L. And so I'm an author. I pretty much I teach international people how to speak English. I have a lot of, I post a lot of content on the internet. I skateboard, I play congas, and like essentially, like my number one priority and goal in life is to just be somebody that left behind a really rich legacy, and just stick to the basics. I think today we live in such a materialistic world that you don't really gotta do too much to be acknowledged, because of the fact that like your existence in itself is already enough to prove that you're doing something excellent. A lot of our people have already survived and have gone through so much that you don't have to be the biggest and the flashiest and strive for the highest realms in society to be acknowledged as somebody great. So essentially, being a family man, being a good friend, being a good teacher, a good author, a good skateboarder, a good musician, like just the basics. I really don't have aspirations to be like this hyper capitalist CEO or nothing like that. So
Okay.
like that's kind of like where I'm going with it. Stay true to hip hop and just be a good person. Honestly, be a good father,
Okay.
create a family that's stronger and more resilient than the one that came before me.
Okay.
Stuff
Very
like
nice.
that.
Marco, thank you very much for your words of inspiration,
Thank you, bro.
even sharing your works. And where can we find your works? Is there anywhere where we can find your work?
Definitely on all platforms. My name is Marco EL Boriken. That's Marco EL Boriken on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and on Amazon as well. My book is available. And yeah, man, I'm always down to network. I'm always down to build and expand on the culture, especially when it comes to like Aboriginal and Indigenousness and anything that's got to do with just Moorish posterity. So
I thank you very much,
thank you,
Marco,
man.
for sharing your story.
Thank you
And
so
wish you
much.
best of luck and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us with another guest, Marco, for sharing his dreams and aspiration with us. Join us next week with another story from somebody else. We don't know. But I hope you come and join us again. Like and subscribe to the channel. ACE, Arts, Culture, Education. Thank you again for joining me. See you.